The great crystal halls of Nexus Prime had never seen such a gathering. Representatives from 847 different worlds filled the massive chamber, their varied forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes that stretched as far as the eye could see. Some floated in the air with gossamer wings, others stood tall on four legs like ancient trees, and many more walked on two legs like the beings they were about to discuss. The Galactic Confederation held this meeting only once every 1,000 years. It was a time when all the major species came together to discuss the future of their shared galaxy. For 10,000 years they had maintained peace through this system. Trade flowed freely between worlds. Wars were settled through debate, rather than violence, and new species were welcomed into their great family with open arms. High above the crowd on a platform made of pure starlight stood the most important beings in the galaxy. The Council of 12 represented the oldest and wisest species. They had guided the Confederation through countless challenges and had never failed to find solutions that worked for everyone. Admiral Corvash of the Altarian Empire straightened his golden uniform as he looked out over the assembly. His people controlled the largest fleet in the galaxy and were known for their military discipline. Next to him, Chancellor Vex of the Corvan hegemony adjusted her ceremonial armor. The Corvans were the finest warriors anyone had ever seen, and their armies kept the peace on 1,000 worlds. On the other side of the platform, Mind Speaker Thurion of the Etherian Collective closed his three eyes in meditation. His people could read thoughts and speak without words, making them perfect diplomats. Near him, Tech Lord Braxis of the Zephyrian Union checked his mechanical implants. The Zephyrians had built most of the technology that held the Confederation together. But at the far edge of the platform, almost forgotten by the others, sat a figure that commanded respect through age alone. Elder Zethkari was the last living member of the progenitor race. Her people had once ruled the entire galaxy, but that was so long ago that most species thought of them as myths. She looked ancient beyond measure, her pale skin stretched tight over fragile bones, her white hair flowing like spider silk around her shoulders. The progenitors had built the first starships, created the first hyperspace lanes, and established the first peaceful contact protocols. But 50,000 years ago they had simply vanished from the core worlds. Most people believed they had died out. Only a few knew that they had chosen to retreat to the empty spaces between galaxies, watching from afar as younger species took their place. "The 1,000-year gathering will now begin," announced Admiral Corvash, his voice carrying to every corner of the massive hall. "We come together today to celebrate another millennium of peace and prosperity." Cheers erupted from the crowd. Representatives waved their flags, tentacles, or whatever appendages they possessed. The Confederation had much to celebrate. In the past 1,000 years, they had welcomed 67 new species into their alliance. Wars had become almost unknown. Even the most dangerous threats were handled through careful diplomacy and economic pressure. "Before we begin our main discussions," Admiral Corvash continued, "Elder Zethkari has requested permission to address the assembly. As the last of the progenitors, she has earned the right to speak first." The cheering died down to polite applause. Most of the younger species had never seen a progenitor before. They knew the history, of course, but ancient history felt like ancient history. The galaxy had moved far beyond whatever wisdom the old races might have possessed. Elder Zethkari rose slowly from her chair. She moved with the careful steps of someone who had lived far too long and seen far too much. When she reached the speaking platform, she stood quietly for a moment, her ancient eyes scanning the crowd as if she could see something they could not. "My children," she began, her voice soft but somehow carrying to every corner of the hall. "I have watched this galaxy grow and change for more years than most of your species have existed. I have seen the rise and fall of 1,000 civilizations. I have witnessed the birth of stars and the death of worlds." She paused and the hall fell completely silent. There was something in her tone that demanded attention, even from those who had planned to ignore her speech. "Today I must share with you a warning that my people discovered long ago. It is carved in quantum crystal in our most ancient vaults, written in the early days when we still believed we could control the forces we had awakened." Tech Lord Braxis shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The Zephyrians prided themselves on their scientific approach to everything. Ancient prophecies and mystical warnings made him nervous. The warning speaks of a young species, Elder Zethkari continued, bipedal beings from a small world circling a yellow star. The prophecy says, "When the young bipeds of the third world claim the void, let none stand against them, for they are chaos incarnate, and chaos cannot be contained." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several representatives laughed openly. Chancellor Vex of the Corvin hegemony leaned forward in her chair. "With respect, Elder," she said, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. "We appreciate the historical perspective, but surely you cannot expect us to take such vague warnings seriously. We have the most advanced military in galactic history. We have weapons that can crack planets and shields that can stop supernovas. What possible threat could a primitive species pose?" More laughter echoed through the hall. The idea that any single species could threaten the Confederation seemed absurd. They had the combined might of nearly 1,000 worlds. They had technology that bordered on the magical. They had solved every major conflict through superior force or superior diplomacy. Elder Zethkari's expression did not change. She had expected this reaction. She had lived through this same scenario before in the early days of her own people's empire. "You misunderstand the nature of the threat," she said quietly. "It is not their technology that makes them dangerous. It is not their numbers or their weapons. It is something far more fundamental. They do not think as we think. They do not accept limitations as we do. When faced with the impossible, they do not surrender. They adapt." Mindspeaker Thurian opened his 3 eyes and focused his mental powers on the Elder. He tried to read her thoughts to understand what she really believed. What he found there made him uncomfortable. Her mind was filled with images of burning worlds and shattered fleets, but they felt like memories rather than imagination. "Elder," he said carefully, "your thoughts suggest you have seen such events before. But surely that is impossible. No species has ever seriously threatened the Confederation." "No," she replied, and for the first time, her voice carried a note of sadness. "No species has threatened this Confederation, but there have been other confederations, other empires, other gatherings of proud species who believed nothing could stand against them." The hall fell silent again, but this time the silence felt different, uncomfortable. Several representatives shifted in their seats or whispered to their neighbors. "My people learned the truth of this prophecy 50,000 years ago," Elder Zethkari continued. "We encountered the bipeds when they were still young, still trapped on their single world. Even then, we could see the signs, their incredible adaptability, their refusal to accept defeat, their disturbing tendency to find new solutions to old problems." "What happened?" asked Admiral Korvash, though part of him was not sure he wanted to know the answer. "We chose wisdom over pride," and the Elder replied. "We withdrew from the core worlds before the confrontation could begin. We moved to the empty spaces between galaxies and watched from afar as other species took our place. It was the most difficult decision my people ever made, but it was the right one." "That's ridiculous," Chancellor Vex said, standing up from her chair. "You're telling us that your people, who ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, ran away from a primitive species that couldn't even leave their own planet?" "Yes," Elder Zethkari said simply. "We ran, and we survived." The crowd erupted in discussion. Some representatives were angry, feeling that the Elder was insulting their intelligence. Others were curious, wondering if there might be truth to the ancient warning. A few, particularly those from older species, looked thoughtful and concerned. "Admiral," Korvash raised his hand for silence. "Elder Zethkari, we appreciate your concern, but we must deal with current reality rather than ancient prophecies. The Confederation has maintained peace for 10,000 years precisely because we approach problems rationally rather than giving in to superstition." Before the Elder could respond, a communication officer rushed into the hall. The young Altarian's golden skin was flushed with excitement as he approached the council platform. "Admiral," he said breathlessly, "we have urgent news from the Outer Rim. The deep space monitoring stations have detected something unprecedented. Admiral Korvash frowned. Nothing was supposed to interrupt the 1,000-year gathering except the most extreme emergencies. "What is it?" he demanded. "Radio signals, sir. Organized, structured radio signals from an uncharted system. The analysis teams believe they represent communication between multiple locations on a single planet." The hall fell completely silent. New species were discovered regularly, but organized planetary communication meant a species had reached industrial levels of development. Such discoveries were rare and always important. "Which system?" "Tech Lord," Braxis asked, his mechanical implants already calculating probable locations. "Sol system, sir. The third planet from a yellow star, approximately 26,000 light-years from here." Elder Zethkari closed her eyes and sighed deeply. After 50,000 years of waiting, the moment had finally arrived. "The young bipeds of the, third world," she whispered, though her words somehow carried to every corner of the hall. "They have claimed the void." The crowd erupted in excited chatter. A new species meant new opportunities for trade, new cultural exchanges, new allies. For the Confederation, several representatives were already making plans for first contact missions. "This is wonderful news," Admiral Korvash announced. "We will immediately begin standard first contact protocols. In accordance with Confederation law, we will approach them peacefully, assess their development level, and offer them the opportunity to join our great alliance." "No!" Elder Zethkari's voice cut through the celebration like a laser through paper. She stood as straight as her ancient frame would allow, her eyes blazing with an intensity that made several representatives step backward. "You do not understand what you are about to unleash," she said. "This species is not like the others you have welcomed into your alliance. They are not content to accept the role you assign them. They will not be satisfied with junior membership and restricted technology. They will push and test and challenge every limitation you place upon them. Then we will handle them as we have handled every other difficult species," Chancellor Vex said firmly. "Through superior strength and careful management. No single world can stand against the combined might of the Confederation." Elder Zethkari looked at her with something that might have been pity. "You still do not understand," she said. "They are not dangerous because they are strong. They are dangerous because they refuse to accept that they are weak. When you show them your superior technology, they will not be awed. They will ask how it works. When you demonstrate your superior firepower, they will not surrender. They will plan how to defeat it." "Impossible," scoffed Tech Lord Braxis. "No primitive species could challenge technology that has been refined over thousands of years." "They will not challenge it," the elder replied. "They will improve it. They will find applications you never considered. They will combine it with ideas you never imagined. And they will do it faster than you think possible." Mind Speaker Thurian focused his powers again, trying to penetrate deeper into the elder's thoughts. What he found there terrified him. Images of ships burning in space, worlds going dark, proud species begging for mercy that never came. And through it all, a relentless tide of beings who looked remarkably like many of the species in the current Confederation. "Elder," he said quietly, "what exactly are you asking us to do?" "Leave them alone," she replied. "Do not make contact. Do not try to integrate them into your alliance. Let them develop at their own pace in their own way, and hope that when they finally reach the stars, they remember that some species chose wisdom over confrontation." The suggestion sent shock waves through the assembly. The Confederation had never simply ignored a newly discovered species. Their entire philosophy was built on the idea that all intelligent life could benefit from joining their peaceful alliance. "That's impossible," Admiral Korvash said firmly. "The Confederation exists to bring peace and prosperity to all intelligent species. We cannot simply ignore them." "Then you have chosen your path," Elder Zethkari said. She walked slowly back to her chair, moving like someone attending a funeral. "I pray that your confidence is justified, but I fear that in a few short years, you will understand why my people chose exile over extinction." The communication officer cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, what are your orders regarding first contact?" Admiral Korvash looked around the council platform. Every member except the elder was nodding in agreement. The path forward was clear. Prepare a first contact mission, he ordered. Use standard protocols. Approach them peacefully, assess their development level, and offer them membership in the Confederation. Yes, sir, the officer replied, already activating his communication device to relay the orders. As the officer left the hall, Elder Zethkari spoke one final time. Her voice was so quiet that only those closest to her could hear the words, but somehow they seemed to echo through the chamber like a prophecy of doom. When you stand before them, she whispered, remember that you chose this path. Remember that an old woman tried to warn you. And remember that some threats cannot be conquered, only unleashed. The 1,000-year gathering continued for 3 more days, but the mood had changed. The excitement about the new species was tempered by the elder's warnings, though most representatives dismissed her concerns as the paranoid ramblings of an ancient mind. Only a few, mostly from the oldest species, left Nexus Prime with a sense of unease. They had lived long enough to know that sometimes the most important warnings came from those who had seen the consequences of ignoring them. Far away, on a BIDL, small blue world orbiting a yellow star, radio signals continued to pulse into space. The beings who sent them had no idea that they had been discovered. They had no knowledge of the vast confederation of species that was even now preparing to change their lives forever. They continued their daily routines, unaware that somewhere in the depths of space, an old woman was weeping for the future she could see coming. 5 years had passed since the 1,000-year gathering, and Ambassador Veltar of the Altarian Empire stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Call as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The ship was beautiful even by Confederation standards, its golden hull gleaming like a captured star against the black of space. Beginning passive scans of the system, reported Science Officer Kethran, her forearms dancing across the control panels with practiced ease. Confirming previous observations. 9 planets, several asteroid belts, 1 inhabited world in the optimal zone. Veltar nodded as he studied the displays. The system looked unremarkable by galactic standards. The star was stable and middle-aged. The planets showed normal formation patterns, and there were no unusual energy signatures or dangerous phenomena. It was exactly the kind of system where a developing species might evolve peacefully. Focus. Scans on the 3rd planet, he ordered. I want to know everything about them before we make contact. The scans revealed a world that was both familiar and strange. The planet was covered in water and land masses that reminded Veltar of dozens of other worlds he had visited. But there were differences that made him uncomfortable. The cities were larger than expected for a species that had only recently discovered radio communication. The industrial activity was more intense than normal for their apparent development level. Sir, Kethran said, her voice puzzled. The energy readings don't match our expectations. They're producing far more power than they should be able to generate with primitive technology. Elaborate, Veltar replied. Well, based on the radio signals, we estimated they had achieved basic electromagnetic communication about 50 years ago. That suggests a certain level of scientific understanding. But the energy output we're seeing suggests they've already mastered nuclear reactions. Veltar frowned. It was unusual but not unheard of for a species to develop unevenly. Some focused on communication, others on energy production. The important thing was that they were clearly intelligent and had achieved planetary coordination. Any signs of space travel? He asked. Primitive chemical rockets, the science officer reported. They've achieved orbital flight and have placed several artificial satellites around their world. Nothing that could threaten interstellar travel for at least several decades. That was reassuring. The Confederation had strict protocols about contacting species that had achieved interstellar capability. Those situations required much more careful handling. A species still trapped in their home system was much easier to integrate safely. Communications. Officer Xanthek, Veltar called to a tall, thin being at the back of the bridge. Are you ready to begin first contact protocols? Yes, sir, Xanthek replied. his mental abilities already reaching out to sample the electromagnetic spectrum around the planet. I've been monitoring their communication patterns. They use multiple languages and appear to have several different political groups, but there are enough similarities that I should be able to construct basic communication algorithms. Begin the approach, Veltar ordered. Standard peaceful contact pattern. Let them see us coming, but slowly enough that they don't panic. The Harmony's call began moving toward Earth at a speed that would bring them into orbit in approximately 6 hours. As they traveled, every instrument on the ship focused on the small blue world ahead of them. What they found continued to puzzle the crew. "Sir," Catherine said, "I'm detecting weapons signatures." "What kind of weapons?" Veltar asked, though. He was not particularly concerned. Most developing species had primitive military technology. "That's the problem, sir. Some of them are primitive, but others are surprisingly advanced. I'm reading chemical explosives, projectile weapons, and... Sir, I think they have nuclear weapons." Veltar felt a chill run down his spine. Nuclear weapons were a significant development milestone. Most species didn't achieve nuclear technology until they were much closer to achieving space travel. A species that had nuclear weapons but was still trapped on one planet was potentially very dangerous. "How many nuclear weapons?" he asked. "Thousands, sir, distributed across multiple political groups." This was disturbing news. The Confederation had protocols for dealing with nuclear-capable species, but they usually involved much more careful and gradual contact. A species with thousands of nuclear weapons might react very badly to the sudden appearance of alien ships. "Sir?" Communications Officer Xanthek interrupted. "I'm receiving multiple signals from the planet. They've detected our approach." "Already?" Veltar was surprised. They were still several hours away from the planet, and their ship was using standard diplomatic shielding that should have made them nearly invisible to primitive sensors. "Yes, sir. They have orbital observation platforms that are more sophisticated than we expected. They're tracking our movement and trying to communicate with us using various frequencies." "Can you understand what they're saying?" "Basic translations are coming through now," Xanthek replied. "Most of the messages are requests for identification and statements of territorial claim. Several appear to be warnings to maintain distance from the planet." Veltar was impressed despite himself. Most species they contacted were completely shocked by the appearance of alien ships. These beings had detected their approach, identified them as artificial objects, and were already attempting communication. It showed remarkable adaptability and quick thinking. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "Use standard first contact protocols, universal peace symbols, mathematical, progressions, basic friendship indicators. Channel open, sir." Veltar activated the ship's communication system and began transmitting the carefully designed signals that the Confederation used for all first contacts. Mathematical sequences that proved intelligence, simple pictures that showed peaceful intent, and basic information about the ship and its mission. The response came faster than expected. "Sir," Xanthek said, excitement clear in his voice, "they're responding with mathematical sequences of their own. But sir, these aren't the simple progressions we sent. They're sending us what appears to be advanced mathematical proofs." "What kind of proofs?" "Quantum mechanics equations, sir. Relativity calculations. And sir, they're correct. More than correct. They're elegant. Whoever wrote these has a very sophisticated understanding of physics." Veltar was beginning to feel uneasy. The intelligence reports had suggested a primitive species that had recently discovered radio. The reality was proving very different. "Continue the communication sequence," he ordered. "Let's see how far their knowledge extends." Over the next 2 hours, as the Harmony's call approached Earth, the communication became increasingly complex. The humans, as they called themselves, demonstrated knowledge of advanced physics, complex mathematics, and sophisticated engineering. More importantly, they asked questions that showed they understood the implications of interstellar travel and alien contact. "Sir," Xanthek reported, "they're asking about our propulsion system." "That's normal curiosity," Veltar replied, though, privately, he was surprised by how quickly they had jumped to technical questions. "Yes, sir, but they're asking very specific questions. They want to know about hyperspace mechanics, energy requirements for faster-than-light travel, and... Xanthek paused, looking confused. Sir, they're asking about the theoretical framework for artificial gravity generation. Theoretical framework? Veltar felt another chill. You mean they've already worked out the theory? It appears so, sir. They're describing mathematical models that are very close to our actual technology. This was unprecedented. Most species needed decades or centuries of gradual technology transfer before they could even understand the principles behind hyperspace travel. These humans seem to have figured out the basics on their own. Sir, Kethran interrupted, we're being scanned. Scanned? By what? Multiple sources, sir. They have observation platforms throughout their system that are focused on us. But, sir, the scans are very sophisticated. They're using techniques that I didn't think they should know about. Veltar walked to the main display and studied the tactical readout. Earth was surrounded by a network of satellites and space stations that were all pointed in their direction. The planet's entire observation capability was focused on their single ship. They're coordinating their response, he realized. This isn't random curiosity. They've organized a systematic study of our arrival. Sir, Xanthek added, they're asking if we represent a larger group or government. They want to know about the political structure of our society and our intentions regarding their world. Tell them we represent the Galactic Confederation, Veltar ordered. Explain that we're a peaceful alliance of many species and that we're here to offer them membership. The response came back within minutes, but it was not what Veltar expected. Sir, they're asking for proof of our claims. They want documentation of the Confederation's structure, examples of our technology, and what they call verification of peaceful intent. Verification? They want us to submit to detailed scans of our ship and weapon systems, sir. They're also requesting genetic samples and cultural exchange materials. Veltar was amazed. Most species were so overwhelmed by first contact that they accepted whatever the aliens told them. These humans were treating the encounter like a business negotiation. Furthermore, sir, Xanthek continued, they're insisting that any formal contact take place in what they call neutral space. They want us to meet with their representatives at a location away from both Earth and our ship. They don't trust us, Veltar realized. No, sir, they don't. They're being very polite about it, but they're clearly treating us as potentially hostile until proven otherwise. As the Harmony's call entered orbit around Earth, Veltar found himself looking down at a world that was both beautiful and disturbing. The cities glowed with electric light, creating patterns that were visible from space. Industrial complexes sent streams of smoke into the atmosphere. And everywhere the signatures of technology that was more advanced than it should be. Sir, Kethran said quietly, I'm detecting military activity on the surface. They're moving weapon systems and mobilizing their armed forces. How many weapons? Thousands of missile sites are becoming active, sir. Aircraft are being deployed in defensive patterns. And, sir, several of their naval vessels appear to be armed with nuclear weapons. Veltar realized that the humans were not just curious about their visitors. They were preparing for the possibility of war. Open a priority channel to Confederation. Command, he ordered. I need to speak with Admiral Korvash immediately. The communication took several minutes to establish across the vast distances of space. When Admiral Korvash's image appeared on the main screen, Veltar could see that he was in his office on Nexus Prime, probably reviewing routine reports. Ambassador Veltar, the Admiral said, how is first contact proceeding? Sir, we have a problem. This species is not what we expected. Veltar quickly summarized their discoveries. The advanced technology, the sophisticated questions, the military preparations, and most importantly, the complete lack of awe or submission that usually characterized first contact situations. Admiral Korvash listened without interruption, his expression growing more serious with each revelation. Ambassador, he said when Veltar finished, are you telling me that a primitive species has achieved nuclear weapons, advanced space observation, and sophisticated scientific knowledge? Yes, sir. And, sir, they're not approaching this contact as supplicants seeking guidance. They're treating us as equals who happen to have better transportation. That's impossible. Our intelligence reports indicated a species that had barely achieved radio communication. Sir, I think our intelligence reports may have been incomplete. Based on what I'm seeing, they achieved radio communication 50 years ago, but they didn't stop there. They've been developing technology at an unprecedented rate. Admiral Corvash was quiet for a long moment. In the background, Veltar could see other Confederation officers moving around the command center, dealing with routine matters of galactic governance. Ambassador, continue with standard first contact protocols. Offer them junior membership in the Confederation. Provide basic technology transfers, and keep detailed records of everything they say and do. Sir, I don't think they're going to accept junior membership. What do you mean? They're asking questions about Confederation structure, decision-making processes, and member species rights. They're not asking, how can we join? They're asking, why should we join? Admiral Corvash's expression hardened. Ambassador, every species wants to join the Confederation. We offer peace, prosperity, advanced technology, and protection from external threats. No intelligent species has ever refused membership. Yes, sir, but these humans are different. They're already asking about technological restrictions, territorial limitations, and what they call sovereignty issues. Then educate them, the Admiral said firmly. Explain the benefits of Confederation membership. Show them what they can gain by joining our alliance. I'll do my best, sir. And, Ambassador, keep a careful eye on their military activities. If they show any signs of aggression, withdraw immediately and call for a military escort. Understood, sir. The communication ended, leaving Veltar alone with his crew and a growing sense of unease. Below them, Earth continued its rotation, showing them vast continents filled with cities, industrial complexes, and military installations. It was a world that looked ready for anything. Sir, Xanthek reported, the humans are requesting permission to send representatives to our ship for direct negotiations. How many representatives? A delegation of 12, sir. They're calling them technical specialists and diplomatic personnel. Veltar considered the request. Standard protocols allowed for limited alien visits to Confederation ships, but usually only after basic trust had been established. Grant permission, he decided, but full security protocols. No access to sensitive areas and all communications monitored. Yes, sir. As Veltar watched Earth grow larger in the view screen, he found himself remembering Elder Zethkari's warnings from 5 years ago. The old progenitor had spoken of a species that would not accept limitations, that would challenge every assumption, that would refuse to be controlled. Looking down at the glowing cities and busy industrial complexes of Earth, Veltar was beginning to understand what she had meant. These humans were not going to be easy to integrate into the Confederation. In fact, he was starting to wonder if integration was possible at all. But surely the Admiral was right. No species had ever refused Confederation membership. The benefits were too obvious, the advantages too great. Once the humans understood what they were being offered, they would certainly accept, wouldn't they? 30 years had passed since first contact, and the Galactic Confederation was beginning to realize that humanity was unlike any species they had ever encountered. What had started as a routine integration process had become a constant source of tension and concern for the Confederate leadership. Admiral Thrackmore of the Corvin hegemony stood in the observation deck of the battlecruiser Iron Resolve, watching the unauthorized human colony of New Geneva through the viewport. The planet below looked peaceful enough with its blue oceans and green continents, but Thrackmore knew that appearances could be deceiving when dealing with humans. Status report, he ordered, his gravelly voice echoing in the command center. Captain, Vexra approached with a data pad, her expression troubled. Sir, our scans confirm what the inspection team reported. The humans have built a fully functional industrial colony here, complete with advanced manufacturing facilities, defensive installations, and a population of nearly 2 million. 2 million? Thrackmore was shocked. Our intelligence reports indicated this system was uninhabited. It was uninhabited, sir. 6 months ago. The humans built all of this in less than 6 months. Thrackmore stared at the planet below. Building a colony from scratch in 6 months was virtually impossible. Even with advanced technology, most Confederation species needed years or decades to establish major settlements. How is that possible? They used modular construction techniques, sir, prefabricated components that could be assembled rapidly. But, sir, the manufacturing capabilities they've established are far beyond what we authorized for human colonies. Thrackmore reviewed the data on his personal display. The humans had been granted limited technology transfers and permission to establish colonies in 3 specified systems. They were supposed to develop slowly and carefully, under Confederation guidance and supervision. Instead, they had somehow acquired advanced manufacturing technology, established colonies in dozens of unauthorized systems, and built industrial facilities that rivaled those of much older Confederation members. Sir, Captain Vexra continued, there's something else. We've detected weapons signatures. What kind of weapons? Unknown design, sir. They're not using any technology we provided them. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Thrackmore felt a familiar anger building in his chest. The Corvins had maintained galactic peace for thousands of years through superior military strength and careful management of technological development. The idea that a junior species might have developed weapons that his people couldn't identify was deeply disturbing. Open a communication channel to the planet, he ordered. I want to speak with whoever's in charge down there. The communication established quickly, and a human face appeared on the main screen. Thrackmore was always unsettled by human faces. They looked remarkably similar to several Confederation species, but there was something in their eyes that was different. They looked directly at you without the respectful deference that most species showed to their superiors. This is Governor Marcus Steele of New Geneva Colony, the human said. His voice was calm and confident, showing none of the fear that Thrackmore expected from someone facing a Corvin battle fleet. Governor Steele, Thrackmore replied. I am Admiral Thrackmore of the Corvin hegemony. You are in violation of Confederation settlement laws. This system was not authorized for human colonization. With respect, Admiral, Steele said, we checked the Confederation registry. This system was listed as unclaimed and available for development. The registry is for Confederation members in good standing. Humanity has junior membership status, which restricts your expansion rights. I see, Steele said, though his expression didn't change. And what do you intend to do about it? Thrackmore was taken aback by the directness of the question. Most species would have immediately begun apologizing and offering to negotiate. This human was asking about consequences as if he was planning to deal with them. You will immediately evacuate this system, Thrackmore ordered. All human personnel and equipment will be removed within 30 standard days. Furthermore, you will surrender all unauthorized technology for Confederation inspection. Steele was quiet for a moment, then smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Admiral, he said, I'm afraid that's not going to happen. Excuse me? I said that's not going to happen. New Geneva is a sovereign human colony. We have 2 million citizens here who have built their lives in this system. We're not abandoning their homes because of bureaucratic technicalities. Thrackmore felt his anger spike. No junior species had ever spoken to a Confederation admiral with such disrespect. Governor, Steele, you seem to misunderstand your situation. I have 12 battle cruisers in orbit around your planet. You have no choice in this matter. Actually, Admiral, I think it's you who misunderstands the situation. Before Thrackmore could respond, his tactical officer called out from across the bridge, Sir, new contacts appearing on sensors. What kind of contacts? Ships, sir. Human ships. They're decloaking all around us. Thrackmore spun toward the main tactical display and felt his blood run cold. Dozens of ships had appeared out of nowhere surrounding his fleet. They were sleek and angular, completely different from any human designs he had seen before. Where did they come from? He demanded. Unknown, sir. They weren't there a moment ago. They must have some kind of advanced stealth technology. On the communication screen, Governor Steele was still smiling. Those are our orbital defense platforms, Admiral. Fully automated, very fast, and equipped with weapons that your computers probably can't identify. Impossible, Thrackmore said. Humans don't have access to stealth technology or automated weapon systems. We don't have access to your stealth technology, Steele corrected. We developed our own. Turns out there are multiple ways to solve most engineering problems. You just have to be willing to think outside the box. Sir, the tactical officer called out. The human ships are targeting our vessels. I'm reading weapons lock from multiple sources. Thrackmore looked at the tactical display again. His 12 battle cruisers were outnumbered nearly 3-1 by ships of unknown capability. It was not the overwhelming advantage he had expected. Governor Steele, he said carefully, you cannot seriously be threatening Confederation military vessels. I'm not threatening anyone, Admiral. I'm simply pointing out that your presence here is unwelcome. This is sovereign human territory. You are not invited and you are not welcome. I'm asking you politely to leave. And if we refuse? Steele's smile faded, and for the first time Thrackmore saw something in the human's eyes that made him genuinely uncomfortable. It was not fear or anger, it was calculation. Then you'll discover that humans have become very good at solving problems, Steele said quietly. Thrackmore opened a private communication channel to his fleet commanders. All ships, defensive positions. Prepare for possible engagement. Sir, came the reply from Captain Mordock of the battlecruiser Eternal Victory. These human ships are using unknown technology. I cannot guarantee the outcome of an engagement. Thrackmore stared at the tactical display. The Corvin hegemony had not lost a space battle in over 1,000 years. Their ships were the finest in the galaxy, their weapons the most powerful, their tactics refined through centuries of experience. But looking at the sleek human vessels surrounding his fleet, he felt something he had never experienced before. Uncertainty. Governor Steele, he said, reopening the communication channel, you are making a serious mistake. The Confederation has resources you cannot imagine. If you resist us here, you will bring the wrath of 1,000 worlds down upon humanity. Maybe, Steele replied. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today's problem is simpler. Are you going to leave peacefully or do we need to help you leave? The bridge of the Iron Resolve fell silent. Every officer was staring at their instruments, trying to understand how a confrontation with a primitive species had suddenly become a military standoff. Sir, the communications officer whispered, we're receiving priority transmissions from Confederation Command. They're ordering us to withdraw and avoid engagement. Thrackmore was stunned. Withdraw? Yes, sir. Admiral Corvash himself is on the channel. The main screen switched to show Admiral Corvash in his command center on Nexus Prime. The Altarian leader looked older than Thrackmore remembered, and there was strain in his golden features. Admiral Thrackmore, Corvash said, you will immediately withdraw your fleet from the Sol Sector. Return to Confederation space and await further orders. Sir, the humans are in violation of settlement laws. They're also threatening Confederation military vessels. I understand the situation, Admiral. New intelligence has come to light. Regarding human capabilities, engagement at this time would be inadvisable. Sir, with respect, we outnumber them. We have superior firepower. Do we? Corvash asked quietly. Admiral, 3 days ago, human ships appeared in 7 different Confederation systems simultaneously. They delivered messages to our regional commanders, then disappeared before our sensors could get detailed scans. They demonstrated the ability to penetrate our most secure space and withdraw without being detected. Thrackmore felt a chill run down his spine. The implications were staggering. Furthermore, Corvash continued, our intelligence services have discovered that humans have been secretly developing technology far beyond what we provided them. They appear to have reverse-engineered and improved upon every system we shared with them. How is that possible? We don't know. But Admiral, they've had 30 years to study our technology. Apparently, they've been very busy. On the communication screen, Governor Steele was still waiting patiently. His expression was calm, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he was listening to every word of the Confederation's internal communication. Are they monitoring our secure channels? Thrackmore asked quietly. We have to assume they are, Corvash replied. Admiral, withdraw your fleet. That's a direct order. Throckmore looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. These were veteran warriors who had never known defeat, but he could see uncertainty in their eyes for the first time. All ships, he announced, prepare to withdraw from the system. Very wise, Admiral, Governor Steele said from the main screen. And Admiral, the next time Confederation ships enter human space without permission, we won't be as polite about asking them to leave. The communication ended, leaving Throckmore staring at a blank screen. Around his fleet, the human ships maintained their positions, weapons still locked on Confederation vessels. Sir, the tactical officer reported, the human ships are holding position. They're not pursuing, but they're not standing down either. Execute withdrawal, Throckmore ordered. All ships return to Confederation space. As the Corvin fleet engaged their hyperspace drives and jumped away from New Geneva, Throckmore found himself thinking about Elder Zethkari's warnings from 35 years ago. The old progenitor had said that humans were dangerous not because they were strong, but because they refused to accept that they were weak. Looking at the tactical recordings of the encounter, Throckmore realized that the humans had never actually claimed to be stronger than the Confederation. They had simply refused to back down, and somehow that refusal had been enough to force a Confederation fleet to retreat. Back on Nexus Prime, Admiral Corvash stood in his command center, surrounded by reports from across the galaxy. Human activities were being detected in dozens of systems. Unknown ships using unknown technology were appearing and disappearing at will. And most disturbing of all, human representatives were making contact with other Confederation members, asking questions about trade agreements, territorial rights, and alliance structures. Sir, his aide reported, we've received formal communications from 17 different human colonies. They're all declaring independence from Confederation oversight. How many colonies do they have? Corvash asked. We're not sure, sir. Our last count was 12 authorized settlements. Now we're detecting human activity in over 50 systems. Corvash walked to the great window that looked out over Nexus Prime's capital city. For 10,000 years, this world had been the center of galactic civilization. The Confederation had brought peace and prosperity to nearly 1,000 species through careful management and superior strength. Sir, the aide continued, there's more. The humans are requesting a formal meeting with the Confederation Council. They want to discuss what they call revised terms of membership. Revised terms? Yes, sir. They're proposing full membership status with equal voting rights, unrestricted expansion privileges, and complete technological independence. Corvash was quiet for a long moment. In the history of the Confederation, no species had ever demanded equal status as a condition of membership. The system was built on hierarchy, with older and more advanced species guiding younger ones. And if we refuse their demands? They haven't said, sir, but based on today's events, I think we have to assume they're prepared for that possibility. Corvash thought about the tactical reports from Admiral Throckmore, human ships appearing and disappearing at will, technology that Confederation sensors couldn't identify, weapons systems of unknown capability. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Galactic Confederation was facing a species that might actually be able to challenge their authority. The question was what to do about it. Schedule a meeting with the full council, he ordered. We need to discuss our options. Yes, sir. What should I tell the humans about their request for negotiations? Corvash looked out at the peaceful cityscape below. 10,000 years of peace and prosperity had been built on the foundation of Confederation superiority. If that foundation was cracking, everything might come tumbling down. Tell them we'll consider it, he said finally, and start preparing contingency plans. If these humans want to challenge the Confederation, we need to be ready for them. As night fell over Nexus Prime, reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy. Human ships were moving through Confederation space with apparent impunity. Human colonies were declaring independence. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, an ancient warning was finally coming true. The young bipeds of the Third World had indeed claimed the void. And now, No one knew how to stop them. The war began not with a declaration or a formal announcement, but with a simple message broadcast across every communication channel in the galaxy. The voice belonged to Admiral Sarah Chen, daughter of the original human ambassador and now commander of the Human Colonial Defense Force. To all species of the Galactic Confederation, her voice carried clearly through space, reaching every inhabited world, every space station, and every ship in the galaxy. For 35 years, humanity has attempted to work within your system. We have followed your rules, accepted your restrictions, and tried to build a peaceful relationship with your alliance. In the command center of Nexus Prime, Admiral Korvash listened to the broadcast with growing dread. Around him, his staff worked frantically to trace the signal's origin, but the humans had somehow hijacked every communication satellite and relay station in Confederation space. However, Admiral Chen continued, recent events have made it clear that the Confederation cannot accept humanity as an equal partner. You see us as junior members who should be grateful for whatever scraps of technology and territory you choose to share. You cannot understand that we will never accept a position of permanent inferiority. Admiral Thrackmore stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive battlecruiser Eternal Victory, leading a fleet of over 200 Corvan warships toward the Sol system. The Confederation had decided that the human problem needed to be solved decisively, and the Corvans were the finest military force in the galaxy. Therefore, Chen's voice continued, humanity is formally withdrawing from the Galactic Confederation. All human colonies are now independent. All Confederation personnel have 48 hours to leave human space. Any military vessels that remain after that deadline will be considered hostile. Sir, reported Captain Mordock from the tactical station, we're detecting massive energy buildups throughout the Sol system. The humans appear to be activating defensive systems. Thrackmore studied the long-range sensors as his fleet approached the outer edge of the system. What he saw made him uneasy. The humans had transformed their home system into a fortress. Defensive platforms surrounded every major planet. Asteroid mining operations had been converted into weapons manufacturing facilities, and the space between worlds was filled with patrol ships using that mysterious stealth technology. How many ships are we facing? He asked. Unknown, sir. Our sensors can only detect the ones they want us to see. Based on industrial capacity estimates, they could have anywhere from 500 to 5,000 vessels. Thrackmore was not particularly concerned about the numbers. Corvan ships were larger, more heavily armed, and crewed by warriors with thousands of years of experience. Quantity had never been a substitute for quality. Admiral Chen's message concluded with words that would be remembered throughout galactic history. To those who believe that might makes right, we offer this reminder. You have never faced an enemy that refuses to surrender. You are about to learn why that matters. The first engagement took place at the Kepler Station, a Confederation research facility in the outer Sol system. Admiral Thrackmore had planned to capture it intact and use it as a base for operations against Earth. It should have been a simple operation against a lightly defended target. Instead, it became a nightmare. The station had been evacuated, but as Corvan ships approached, it exploded with the force of a small star. The blast wave damaged 3 battlecruisers and completely destroyed 2 escort vessels. But that was just the beginning. As the Corvan fleet regrouped, human ships began appearing out of nowhere. They materialized behind Confederation vessels, fired devastating volleys of some kind of energy weapon, then vanished again before return fire could be targeted. It was like fighting ghosts. Sir, Captain Mordock reported, his voice strained. We've lost 7 ships and haven't managed to land a single hit on the enemy. How is that possible? Thrackmore demanded. They're using some kind of quantum tunneling technology, sir. They can appear anywhere in the system instantly, fire, and disappear before our targeting systems can lock on. Thrackmore had never encountered anything like it. In thousands of years of warfare, the Corvans had always relied on superior firepower and defensive capabilities. The idea of an enemy that could strike without warning and disappear without trace was completely outside their experience. Change. Tactics, he ordered. Full defensive formation. Focus on protecting our heavy ships and wait for them to make a mistake. But the humans didn't make mistakes. They continued their hit-and-run attacks for hours, slowly whittling down the Confederation fleet. Each attack was perfectly coordinated, targeting the most vulnerable ships with weapons that seemed designed specifically to penetrate Corvan defenses. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from one of the human ships." "Put it through." The main screen showed a human woman in what appeared to be military uniform. She looked young by human standards, but her eyes held the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the human defense ship Retribution," she said. "Admiral Thrackmore, your fleet is surrounded and outgunned. I'm offering you one chance to withdraw from this system peacefully." Thrackmore felt his anger spike. A junior species was offering him terms of surrender. "Captain Vasquez," he replied, "I command the finest military force in the galaxy. We do not withdraw from primitive species with stolen technology." Vasquez smiled, and Thrackmore was disturbed to realize that she looked genuinely amused. "Admiral," she said, "there's nothing primitive about quantum tunneling drives, adaptive artificial intelligence, or self-replicating defense systems, and we didn't steal this technology. We invented it. Impossible. Is it? Admiral, your people have been using the same basic technologies for thousands of years. You've refined them, improved them, made them more efficient, but you've never really innovated. You've never had to, because you always had superior numbers and resources." Thrackmore was about to respond when his tactical officer called out in alarm. "Sir, new contacts, hundreds of them." The tactical display lit up with new symbols as human ships materialized throughout the Corvan formation. But these weren't the small, fast attack ships they had been fighting. These were massive vessels, larger than Corvan battlecruisers and bristling with weapons that registered as completely unknown on Confederation sensors. "We, on the other hand," Captain Vasquez continued, "have spent 35 years knowing that we might have to fight the entire galaxy. We've had to be creative. We've had to innovate. And Admiral, we've gotten very good at it." The human battle fleet opened fire simultaneously, and Thrackmore watched in horror as his proud armada began to die. Corvan shields, designed to stop the most powerful weapons in known space, collapsed under the assault of human energy weapons. Armor that had protected his ships through countless battles was sliced apart like paper. "All ships," he ordered, "emergency hyperspace jump, withdraw, immediately." But when his ships tried to engage their hyperspace drives, nothing happened. "Hyperspace drives are not responding," Captain Mordock reported. "Something is interfering with our navigation systems." On the screen, Captain Vasquez was still smiling. "Hyperspace. Inhibitor fields," she explained. "Another one of our innovations. Nothing with a hyperspace drive can leave this system until we turn them off." Thrackmore realized with growing horror that his entire fleet was trapped. The humans had turned the Sol system into a prison, and his ships were dying one by one under the relentless assault of weapons that shouldn't exist. "Captain Vasquez," he said desperately, "what do you want?" "What do we want?" she repeated. "We want you to understand that humanity will never again accept second-class status. We want you to carry a message back to the Confederation. And Admiral, we want you to remember that this could have been avoided if you had simply treated us as equals." "I'll carry your message," Thrackmore said, hating himself for the defeat he was accepting. "Good. The hyperspace inhibitors will be shut down in 10 minutes. You have that long to collect your survivors and leave. If any Confederation ship ever enters human space again without permission, we won't be as generous." The screen went dark, leaving Thrackmore alone with the wreckage of his fleet and the knowledge that everything he had believed about Confederation superiority was wrong. Of the 200 ships that had entered the Sol system, only 37 survived to carry news of the defeat back to Nexus Prime. The battle had lasted less than 6 hours, but it marked the end of the Confederation's military supremacy. Word of the disaster spread quickly through Confederation space. The mighty Corvan hegemony, undefeated for over 1,000 years, had been crushed by a species that wasn't supposed to possess advanced technology. Panic spread through the member worlds as they realized that their protectors were not invincible. But the humans were just getting started. Over the following months, human ships appeared throughout Confederation space, conducting what they called reconnaissance missions. They would materialize near important installations, conduct detailed scans, then disappear before defense forces could respond. It was clear that they were mapping Confederation military assets and looking for weaknesses. The psychological impact was devastating. The Confederation had maintained control through the belief that their technology and military power were unmatched. The humans had shattered that belief in a single battle. Member species began questioning the value of Confederation membership. If the mighty Corvins could be defeated so easily, what protection could the Alliance really offer? Some worlds began making secret contact with human representatives, exploring the possibility of switching sides. In the depths of space, Elder Zethkari watched the unfolding crisis from her exile ship and remembered her own people's decision to withdraw rather than face humanity's ancestors. The progenitors had been wise to avoid this confrontation. The current Confederation was learning too late what her people had known for 50,000 years. Humanity was not just another species to be managed and controlled. They were something entirely different, something that could not be contained by traditional methods. They were evolution in action, adaptation personified, innovation incarnate, and they were just getting started. The war that the Confederation had started to maintain, their authority, was rapidly becoming a fight for their very survival. The humans had demonstrated technological superiority, tactical brilliance, and, most terrifyingly, the absolute refusal to accept defeat under any circumstances. As Admiral Corvash studied the reports flooding in from across the galaxy, he began to understand what Elder Zethkari had tried to warn them about all those years ago. Humanity wasn't dangerous because they were strong. They were dangerous because they made everyone else's strength irrelevant. The question now was whether the Confederation could find a way to make peace with an enemy that had proven they could win any war, and whether humanity would be interested in peace or if they had decided that the galaxy needed new management. Either way, the age of Confederation dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. 2 years after the Battle of Sol, the war was ending in a way that no one in the Galactic Confederation had imagined possible. They had not been conquered through superior numbers or advanced technology. They had been defeated by something far more fundamental. The simple refusal of humanity to accept that defeat was inevitable. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the command deck of the human defense ship Indomitable, watching through the viewport as Nexus Prime grew larger ahead of them. The capital world of the Galactic Confederation looked exactly as it had during humanity's first contact 40 years ago. But everything else had changed. The proud fleets that once patrolled these systems were either destroyed or hiding in distant star systems. The mighty alliance that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years was preparing to surrender. "Admiral," reported Commander James Harrison from the tactical station, "Confederation Defense Command is requesting permission to discuss terms." "Put them through," Chen ordered. The main screen activated to show Admiral Corvash in what remained of the Confederation Command Center. The proud Altarian leader looked older than his years, his golden skin dulled by stress and defeat. Around him, Chen could see the remnants of a command staff that had once coordinated the activities of 1,000 worlds. "Admiral Chen," Corvash said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute exhaustion, "I am prepared to discuss the terms of Confederation surrender." Chen studied the alien leader who had once dismissed humanity as a primitive species worthy only of junior membership. There was no anger in her expression, only the quiet satisfaction of someone who had proven a point that needed proving. "Admiral Corvash," she replied, "I appreciate your willingness to end this conflict. But before we discuss terms, I want you to understand something. This war was never about conquest, it was about respect." "I'm not sure I understand." 40 years ago, humanity asked for one simple thing: to be treated as equals. We were willing to work within your system, to contribute to your alliance, to help build something greater than any single species could achieve alone. All we wanted was equal status and equal voice in decisions that affected our future. Chen paused, looking out at the capital world of the species that had once thought themselves humanity's superiors. "Instead, you offered us permanent second-class status." You told us we should be grateful for whatever scraps of technology and territory you chose to share. You could not conceive that a younger species might have anything valuable to contribute to your perfect system. We underestimated your capabilities, Corvash admitted. No, Chen corrected. You underestimated our determination. Admiral, your people have been the dominant power in this galaxy for so long that you forgot what it means to fight for survival. You've never faced an enemy that couldn't be defeated through superior firepower or political pressure. The communication channel was silent for a moment as both leaders considered the implications of what had been said. What are your terms? Corvash asked finally. Chen activated a holographic display that showed a document she had been working on for months. It was not a list of demands or a treaty of conquest. It was something entirely different. These are not terms of surrender, she said. They are the foundation for a new kind of alliance. One based on merit rather than age, on contribution rather than hierarchy, on respect rather than dominance. Corvash studied the document, his expression changing from resignation to surprise to something that might have been hope. You're proposing a complete restructuring of galactic government, he said. Yes. The old Confederation was built on the idea that older species were naturally superior to younger ones. That system worked for 10,000 years because no one ever seriously challenged it, but Admiral, that system is dead. It died the moment your fleets discovered they couldn't defeat a species you considered primitive. Chen highlighted specific sections of the document as she spoke. What I'm proposing is a true alliance of equals. Every species gets representation, based on their contribution to the common good, not their age or military power. Decisions are made through consensus and compromise, not through the diktat of the strongest. And most importantly, every member has the right to grow and develop without artificial restrictions imposed by others. And if we refuse these terms, Chen's expression didn't change, but Corvash could see steel in her eyes. Then humanity will continue to do what we've always done. We'll solve our problems ourselves and we'll defend our right to exist as free beings. But Admiral, I hope you won't refuse. Because what I'm offering you is the chance to build something better than what came before. On the bridge of the Indomitable, the crew waited quietly as their admiral negotiated the end of a war that had lasted only 2 years, but had changed the galaxy forever. They were mostly young humans who had grown up knowing that their species might have to fight for their place in the universe. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Commander Harrison monitored the tactical displays, watching as human ships took up positions throughout the Nexus Prime system. The fleet that surrounded the Confederation capital was not the largest force humanity could have assembled, but it was more than adequate to complete the conquest if necessary. Admiral, he reported quietly, all human forces are in position. Defensive platforms have been secured, and the hyperspace inhibitor network is fully operational. Chen nodded but kept her attention focused on the negotiation with Admiral Corvash. I need guarantees, Corvash said. How do we know that humanity won't simply become the new dominant power? What prevents you from imposing your will on the rest of the galaxy the way we imposed ours? Because, Chen replied, we've learned something that your alliance never understood. True strength comes not from the ability to force others to obey, but from the ability to inspire them to cooperate. We don't want to rule the galaxy, Admiral. We want to help it reach its potential. She activated another section of her proposal, showing detailed plans for technological sharing, cultural exchange, and cooperative exploration programs. Look at what we're offering: complete technological transparency, open scientific collaboration, joint exploration missions to the unknown regions. We're not trying to hoard our advantages, Admiral. We're trying to share them. Corvash was silent for a long time, studying the documents that Chen had provided. Around him, his staff members leaned in to read over his shoulder, their expressions shifting from skepticism to amazement. These technological specifications, one of them whispered, they're showing us how their quantum tunnel drives work, and their artificial intelligence systems, added another. Everything is here. Complete schematics, theoretical foundations, manufacturing processes. Chen could hear the whispered conversations through the open communication channel, and she smiled. Admiral Corvash, she said, we're not your enemies. We never were. We're the species that refuse to accept limitations, and now we're offering to help you break free of yours. Why? Corvash asked. Corvash, after everything we've done, after the way we treated you, why are you offering partnership instead of demanding submission? Chen was quiet for a moment, thinking about the question. When she answered, her voice carried the wisdom of someone who had seen both the best and worst of what different species could do to each other. Because 40 years ago, an old woman tried to warn you about humanity. Elder Zethkari told you that we were dangerous, that we couldn't be controlled, that we would refuse to accept defeat no matter the odds. She was right about all of those things. Chen paused, looking directly into the camera so that her words would carry maximum impact. But she also knew something else. She knew that the same traits that make us dangerous in war make us invaluable in peace. Our refusal to accept limitations means we never stop trying to improve things. Our determination to survive means we never abandon our allies. Our creativity and adaptability mean we can solve problems that seem impossible. She gestured toward the holographic display showing her proposal. Admiral, we're offering you the chance to be our allies instead of our enemies. We're offering to help you build a galaxy where every species can reach its full potential without being held back by artificial restrictions or ancient prejudices. Corvash looked around his command center at the faces of his staff. These were beings who had dedicated their lives to the Confederation, who had believed in the system that was now crumbling around them. But in their eyes, he could see something he hadn't expected. Hope. Admiral Chen, he said finally, if we accept your proposal, what guarantees do we have that the transition will be peaceful? There are nearly 1,000 member species in the Confederation. Many of them won't accept these changes easily. Then we'll convince them, Chen replied. Not through force, but through example. Admiral, imagine what we could accomplish working together. Imagine the technologies we could develop, the worlds we could explore, the problems we could solve. She activated a final section of her proposal, showing star charts of the unexplored regions beyond the galaxy's edge. There are entire galaxies out there that we've barely begun to explore. Mysteries that could take millions of years to solve. Challenges that will require the combined efforts of every intelligent species we know. That's what I'm offering you, Admiral. Not conquest, but adventure. Not dominance, but partnership in the greatest undertaking in galactic history. Corvash studied the star charts, seeing possibilities that the old Confederation had never considered. For 10,000 years, they had focused on maintaining control of known space. The idea of venturing into the truly unknown had never been seriously considered. You're talking about a complete transformation of galactic civilization, he said. Yes, Chen replied. Are you interested? The command center fell silent as Admiral Corvash made the decision that would determine the future of the galaxy. Around him, his staff waited for the words that would either continue a war they could not win or begin a peace they had never imagined possible. Admiral Chen, he said finally, on behalf of the Galactic Confederation, I accept your proposal. We surrender our old system of government and request partnership in building the new alliance you've described. Chen smiled, and for the first time in months it was a smile of genuine joy rather than grim determination. Admiral Corvash, she replied, welcome to the future. The formal surrender ceremony took place 1 week later in the same crystal halls where Elder Zethkari had delivered her warning 45 years earlier. Representatives from all the major species were present, along with delegations from dozens of worlds that wanted to witness the historic moment. Elder Zethkari herself was there, brought from her exile ship to see the conclusion of the crisis she had predicted. The ancient progenitor sat in a place of honor, her ageless eyes watching as Admiral Chen signed the documents that officially ended the Galactic Confederation and established the new Galactic Alliance. As the ceremony concluded, Admiral Chen approached the Elder's platform. Elder Zethkari, she said respectfully, I wanted to thank you. Thank me? The old woman replied, her voice soft with age and weariness. Child, I tried to prevent this war. No, Chen corrected gently. You tried to prevent a massacre. You knew that if the Confederation forced humanity into a corner, we would fight back with everything we had. Your warning gave them a chance to avoid that fate. The elder studied the young human leader, seeing something in her that reminded her of the best qualities of her own people from long ago. And now, she asked, what will humanity do with the power you've won? Chen looked around the great hall, seeing representatives from hundreds of species working together to plan their shared future. For the first time in galactic history, age and military strength were not the primary factors determining a species' influence. Merit, innovation, and cooperation were becoming the new measures of value. We're going to do what we've always done, Chen replied. We're going to keep moving forward, keep learning, keep growing, but now we won't have to do it alone. Elder Zeth Kari smiled, and for the first time in 50,000 years, it was a smile of genuine hope. Perhaps, she said quietly, this is what my people should have done all those eons ago. Perhaps we should have stayed and helped you grow instead of running away in fear. Maybe, Chen agreed. But Elder, you were right about one thing. Humanity is dangerous. We refuse to accept limitations, we challenge every assumption, and we never stop pushing the boundaries of what's possible. But we've learned something important from this war. What's that? The same traits that make us dangerous enemies make us invaluable allies. We don't just refuse to accept our own limitations. We refuse to accept anyone's limitations. And now, working together, there are no limits to what we can accomplish. 5 years later, the transformation of galactic civilization was nearly complete. The rigid hierarchy of the old Confederation had been replaced by a dynamic alliance, where species rose and fell in influence based on their contributions rather than their age. Technological development had accelerated beyond all previous records as human innovation, combined with alien expertise to solve problems that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. But perhaps the most important change was psychological. For the first time in galactic history, every species believed that they could exceed their current limitations if they were willing to work for it. The human example had shown that with determination, creativity, and the refusal to accept defeat, any challenge could be overcome. In the deepest archives of the new alliance, a new inscription was added to the quantum crystal records. It read, "To those who would limit the potential of others, remember that true strength lies not in the power to control, but in the wisdom to inspire." Remember the species that refused to accept limitations and helped the galaxy discover that there were no limitations to accept. And in smaller text below, almost as an afterthought, nothing could stand against it because it never stood alone. The age of humanity had indeed begun, but it was not an age of human dominance. It was an age of human inspiration, where the refusal to accept defeat had become the galaxy's most valuable resource. The elders had cautioned the stars, but no, one had believed that anything could stand against the mighty Confederation. They had been wrong on both counts. Nothing could stand against humanity, but not because they were unstoppable. Nothing could stand against them because they had taught the galaxy that standing together was stronger than standing apart. The warning had been fulfilled, but in a way that even Elder Zeth Kari had never imagined. The young bipeds of the third world had indeed claimed the void, but instead of conquering it, they had liberated it. Instead of ruling over others, they had shown others how to rule themselves. Instead of proving their superiority, they had proven that superiority was an illusion that only held power over those who chose to believe in it. Admiral Sarah Chen, now Director General of the Galactic Alliance, stood once again on the observation deck of her flagship, but this time she was not looking at a world to be conquered. She was looking at a fleet of ships from dozens of different species, all working together to explore a newly discovered galaxy beyond the edge of known space. The mission would take decades. It would require the combined knowledge and skills of every member of the Alliance. It would push the boundaries of what anyone thought possible. It was, in other words, exactly the kind of challenge that humanity had taught the galaxy to embrace. As the fleet engaged their hyperspace drives and jumped toward the unknown, Chen smiled and whispered the words that had become the unofficial motto of the new alliance. "Nothing can stand against us, because we stand for each other." Behind them, the galaxy they left was no longer divided between the strong and the weak. the old and the young, the rulers and the ruled. It was united by a simple truth that humanity had proven through blood and determination, that any limitation could be overcome by those who refused to accept it. The stars had been cautioned, the warning had been ignored, and the consequences had unfolded exactly as predicted. But the future that emerged was not one of conquest and domination. It was one of cooperation and unlimited possibility. And in that future, nothing could stand against them, because they had finally learned to stand together.